you to take notes? So, you can access that?
I did not.
Hey, Kathleen, it's Charles. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Awesome.
Oh, okay. So let's do this with after everyone's done, and then. Yeah, let's do that. Perfect. Right.
So what is your Jabber address?
Oh. Either O'Donohue at jabber.isoc.org. It's ODONO
Just asking Chris from if we could.
GHUE
Oh, thank you.
at
At isoc.org?
yeah. It's either isoc or jabber.isoc. Why is it? Yeah. It really helps to have an out of hand. What's yours?
Nacho? Nacho319 at Gmail. 319 at Gmail.
Oh, yeah. I didn't.
All right, I didn't get yours right, so or didn't show up. It's okay. Send me a message. I'll accept.
I don't know.
That's what I got. I'm online and connected.
What? I just went to Central Money for that. What does that have to do with life? NACHO 319
Yep.
at gmail.com.
Yep.
On XMPP or just email?
Google changes that.
I don't know.
I connect via XMPP.
Okay, so it should be
One way.
XMPP. Okay, it should be XMPP.
But I've had a lot of problems with like Gmail not like with Google not liking open activity.
You have no Bluetooth.
It's coming.
No, it's just on the, oh. Yeah, I just kept one and threw all the others out because why should the secretary scan 3 sheets of paper with one signature on each piece? I guessed that we would be able to use one sheet.
CFRG, they forgot to pass blue sheets too, and I'm like, I walk up at the end, I'm like, blue sheets. It's like, no.
Okay. Welcome to the last session of the last day. Well, not quite yet. You are, yeah, survived. I guess that's one way to look at it. Yeah, 2 hours left. So you're in the SACM working group. If it's not where you expect to be, then you should sign the blue sheet, then leave. The blue sheet is circulating. Everybody be sure to sign it. And you got Jabber and minute takers,
I do.
and they are
Jabber. One of you two do minutes? Both of you?
You're in the seat. I need Jabber seat.
yeah. All right. So have you guys thumb wrestled and decided who's doing it? So you're doing it.
I'm doing Jabber, but
Okay.
Okay. Let it be so. Okay.
Can one of you guys just take some notes? Thank you.
I'll be back. It's okay.
Excellent. This is our this is the IETF notewell that you will have possibly seen a few times this week and acknowledged when you registered. So pay attention. This is our agenda. We're in the agenda bassing portion of it. Are there any bashes to the agenda? What happened? Oh, I see.
I saw Hank earlier. I don't know where he went, but I think I'm gonna do the concise software presentation unless Hank jumps me and does it instead. So,
I'm guessing that he won't.
I mean, probably, yeah.
I'll change it on here. but
Okay.
I'm not going to change it on the agenda. I mean, I think we can all remember that, possibly. Maybe. I don't know. It's Friday. I'm not remembering much of anything. Any other agenda bashes? Excellent. So status of the working group. As you will have seen, the SWIMA document got published, and it is RFC 8412. Congratulations to the authors and everybody's persistence. You wanted to ask about interrupt testing?
I did. So SWIMA is on the standards track. In order for it to advance on the standards track, there have to be 2 independent implementations, and we have to do an interop test. And I was hoping that authors or other parties might have some comment as to a plan for that. I'm willing to kind of support that interop test wherever. So if there is a plan for an interop test so that we can move that forward, that's fine. Otherwise, it will just stay, it won't advance on the standards track. It'll just stay as a RFC.
So this is Charles. We've got 2 efforts going forward. Andreas Stefan's got Strong Swan. In fact, it's been published, I believe, or is in the process of being published with SWIMA compliance in there. And there's another independent effort going on by Karl Heinz. So hopefully we might be able to do that. I don't have a timeline for Karl Heinz's work at this point. I owe him an email.
Thank you, Charles. All right. So that brings us to, I believe Hackathon was next. One of the M&Ms.
Oh, it's there.
There is a thing.
It works this time?
Well, it did when I tested it right before now, but
All right.
I didn't test that.
There we go. All right, Bill Bunyan, worked on the hackathon stuff earlier in the week. So first off, kind of our goal was really to try and determine if we can use Yang models to express the actual collection of configuration information. Again, I'll say, admittedly, very limited experience with it. The Yang model expressions have been really good at detailing the stuff that's has been collected, but not necessarily describing what to collect sort of in a generic way, instead of a specific attribute value. You want to kind of express a way to generically say, go get me something from a registry location or something like that. So we kind of created a very simple model that can express the information that we wanted to be collected from an endpoint. Wrote up a little bit of code. Again, it's a very small amount and was fairly hard coded to specific things that we had put together, and started creating a bit more specific Yang models to express those characteristics from we started with a Windows box. So kind of taking things like password policies and user rights assignments, things like that are specific to Windows, and created some basic models around that. The generic sort of collection model was used to kind of drive the code that we wrote to kind of collect and express that Windows stuff. So, the questions we kind of came out with at the end of that was, is this really kind of worth continuing work on? Is it useful to define like this somewhat generic collection strategy and continue with the implementation? Keep going and developing more models. I think engaging more people on the list, sort of models that are similar to, I think, some of the network device baselines that have been developed in this group. Things like that, and then kind of more research into how these other things are accomplished, in other working groups like NetConf, and how that accomplishes those tasks for collection of those specific endpoints. And I think instead of it being somewhat specific, being more sort of generic in nature to kind of define that. And our GitHub repo is right there.
Frank Schaaf, I have a question. Your current test, what kind of endpoint you are collecting the security posture from?
Yeah, we for our testing we use just sort of normal workstations like a Windows workstation or Unix, Linux box.
Some PC, some computer, right? Yeah. So my further question is why you choose the Yang model to collect the security posture information from the computer PC, because Yang, from my understanding, is more suitable for use for the network devices. Mm-hmm. So, yeah,
I think the idea was kind of to determine the applicability to do that. We have some of the stuff that's kind of defined with OVAL and collection methods like that. Wanted to see if we could kind of port that over in a sense, and express that in Yang, since it seems sort of pervasive throughout the IETF.
So how is the effect? How is the result? Do you think it's a good solution?
I'll say in the small amount of progress that I think we actually made, it was pretty effective. The collection mechanism that we defined is a very small model, and it would be up to implementations to be able to kind of interpret that. So there's a bit of complexity there to, keep the model really generic. It makes it a little bit more on the implementation to do stuff. And I think that, it's worth exploring something similar to what you guys did with the network device models.
Yeah, I hope so. Yeah.
Because that's fairly specific information, and it kind of in reading some of those drafts, it kind of tweaked my thinking about some models like that to express that same information for another endpoint. So
so I'm thinking maybe next time, if we can support some remotely way test, we have some cloud-based test environment.
Sure.
If we connect it to them, so we can also join your interpreted test.
Okay.
My last question is, right now, all your information, all what you are doing is collect information. So in Yang data model, they are all the reader-only information.
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. A part of an original intent, part of the hackathon was to see if we could do a similar sort of generic model for evaluation of the collected information as well. We just didn't make it that far.
Okay. Thank you.
That's all I got.
All right. No more questions for Bill? Get out of fucking- This is why I didn't. Wow. So which one would you use doing terminology, Hank or?
Oh, whatever. Oh. Hi, this is Hank on the mic. No, sorry, in the box. This is a short update about the work we do on the terminology document for SACM. We started branching the document in an effort to reconciliate some changes and basically enforce a better pattern for every term definition. This was started by Adam. Thank you very much for that. We also have a project now on the GitHub page that basically is addressing each issue appropriately, like it's on the deck, it's for discussion, it's in discussion and resolved. This is actually working out great. Thank you for that. I wouldn't have started that, but I'm really enjoying it now. Next slide.
Hank.
Oh, I have to do myself.
Yeah. That's what
So what is the reconciliation we are talking about? There was a huge cut, basically a culling of terms. And then we had to argue how and why to bring some of them back. So there is a better rationale now, why some of these terms are included and some are not included. I will not go through the whole diff. That would be a little bit too much of it. The second bullet here is about how we structure it now. So we start with what most people want, a very concise, spot-on definition. Sometimes it's a reference, but the term is so vital to the work we do here that we actually highlight it again as a reference in the terminology draft. And then it is followed by expositional text and other paragraphs that somehow explain like declarative guidance, how is this used here, why is this important, and basically gives more information about other terms and their relationship. Yeah, basically I'm addressing all. There are 21 unresolved issues. It's a very specific number. And but we moved, I think, about 20 of them out of the issue tracker already. So we resolved like about 20 issues in the last iteration. And are going into some details for the more controversial ones, because we decided as a group to remove the ultimately everything encompassing that is an organization thing, asset and asset management, which would include physical keys for my office, for example, and processes that have nothing to do with IT. And then there was a trend on the list to, again, use assets and asset management. And so this is an unresolved issue, unfortunately. And our proposal would be to narrow it down. The first idea is very simple. We just prefix it with IT, an IT asset. This would still include passive cables and patch fields and such, but maybe we just have some exponential text and saying it's active equipment that requires energy, and then we're done with that. Maybe even some, I don't know, installation media, and maybe that's good enough. Because we were, I don't know, grinding this term for ages now and doesn't really make any sense. So I'm asking the group right now, is anyone against removing asset finally and including asset management finally, but retaining hardware and software, the management of hardware and software components? Which is maybe even the term IT asset if you're really bad to it, but I would also remove that actually. So would everybody be okay with removing asset as a term entirely from the documents and just retain hardware components and software components? Thank you. So we will start with, oh, maybe not. Do you want something?
I was just going to say, I'm Adam Montfield, sorry, that I'm in favor of that. So
okay.
I don't know what you guys want to do about it, though. pointing at the chairs.
We will put it to the list, of course, but we can put to the list that was consensus in the room and then.
So if I'm not mistaken, there has been some conversation on the list, and I'm
Yeah.
not hearing any objections. So
Yeah, I have. So I will put onto the list that there was consensus in the room, and if there is also consensus of the standard procedure. Okay. There's an issue. That's a good question. Do we need to define timestamps? They're well defined by 4949. And no, we do not have to redefine them. That's apparent. But again, we reference them and give expositional text because timestamps are of specific importance to the SACM automation process because it is about correlating collection, provenance, like if you collect a few different endpoint attributes at the same time, and this might constitute a specific threat that is exploited or an attack that is happening. So some characteristics of timestamps should be highlighted, and the intended use and why they're vital, why have to always to be included in SACM statements should be elaborated on. But this will be very concise because this is basically an architectural feature and should go into the architecture document ultimately. Unless, do we have an active one now? I don't think so. So it will remain here. It will be refined. If there is no objection in the room here, and again, I will put potential consensus of the room to the list. So is there objection to elaborate on timestamps and how they're used in SACM? Then I will put...
Can I just ask a quick question?
Sure.
Elaborate on timestamp or
Yeah, on their how they are vital to the machine that is a composite of SACM components.
But you're not going to define a specific.
No, we will
timestamp.
reference 4949.
Okay.
We will even retain this strange object terminology they have there. That's not a big problem. We will just elaborate how this is used and what it means to SACM, and that's all.
Okay.
No redefinitions for 4949. I'm running through this, I know. Okay, we have a well-known set of things we want to manage. Pretty much this are our own, or company-owned, or entity or organization also associated endpoints, target endpoints. And then we have this typical bring your own device stuff, or some unknown devices, rogue access points, even desktop PCs that are unknown. And the SACM procedures will be able to discover and find them. But they will not know how to label them. So what we are building is maybe I'm at the wrong slide, right? Okay, sorry. I'm not talking about the slide actually, I'm sorry. But I will finish this thought. So we have the endpoint characterization profile. And the record, sorry, the endpoint characterization record. And if you encounter something like a MAC address that is no management database, or an authentication attempt of a user that is reoccurring and somehow can use a service, but is not nowhere documented, so somebody edited manually, apparently. This will be recorded and aggregated in something that is associated with this entity that we can see over and over again. So if there is a smartphone that is using the guest network on a regular basis, we will at some point can profile it, and every of these profile characters will be aggregated in this endpoint characterization record. Again, this is about identifying target endpoints that are not under your own control. This is a bit out of scope with respect to the tools and the procedures that facilitated. We will define the information that is vital to this characterization process for SACM. And if you do it, or if you include the second component or not, is up to the designer of the implemented architecture. But we will want to at least give a minimal set of guidance via this characteristics, how to deal with that. And now actually to this problem, which I would like Adam to elaborate on. I'm not very prepared for this slide.
Okay,
Sorry.
Adam Montville. Yeah, we talked about this, but I think we were mixing it with the one you just talked about. So, there's some confusion, at least in the GitHub chain, on attribute and what that really means. And in the GitHub chain, there's an assertion I think that you made at some point that an attribute is equivalent to an attribute value pair, which to me says that attribute has value, value is an attribute, which is not intuitive to me at all. Attribute has value, value, like that sentence in the third bullet right there, right after the colon. That attribute has value, value would actually be equivalent to attribute.
Yeah, this is domain range object property notation here.
But I don't think it's right.
So once upon a time, which means I think 2 years ago, we agreed upon that the information model has two primary structures, which are containers and leaves. The leaves we call attribute, and they are AVPs, yes. But we are calling the attributes. It was the consensus of the group. And the containers we would call subjects. Again, there was a very long discussion about this. Nobody was really happy with the compromise. That's because it's a compromise.
Okay.
And that's what we decided on. Both of them are information elements. One of them are composite information elements, and one of them is atomic information elements. And that's the current terminology. We can change it again. I have no strong opinion about it. I wasn't happy with it, but it was a consensus.
No, that's okay.
So,
Yeah. Nancy Cam-Winget. So, yeah, we've had lots of debate. We just need to stick to one. So, I mean, I'm okay. But to reiterate what Hank said, we debated all of this at length. And if I recall, the attribute is the atomic.
yeah.
We were referencing it as an attribute value pair meaning you need to put some kind of label so that you know, so you can attach a semantic meaning to the value. Exactly. So that's what we meant by an atomic element. Now you can have a composite set element, which now I don't remember. I guess we were calling it subject.
Yeah.
But the attribute value pair is supposed to be the atomic one. And we can argue that again, Adam. I'm just saying, personally, Nancy Kim-Winget again, I would like for us to move on. But we argued this arduously for how many sessions and meetings?
That's my answer to this. You can call them
I
fool
don't
and
care
bar.
what
I
we
actually
call
don't care.
it, but it's, you know, we need
If I'm
it.
the only person with an issue with this, then fine. We can definitely.
Maybe Brett has one issue.
So, Brett Jordan, I didn't voice an opinion throughout the discussion and the argument because I have a very strong opinion that maybe not be too popular. But I think too often when we get into naming and we get into these structures and we get into this stuff, we get into really pedantic kind of down in the weeds, and we get so far down in the weeds that we forget that there's oxygen up above, and that people outside of the 20, 30 people that are designing this actually have to read and understand this. And sometimes I think that maybe slightly less pedantic, less precise terms that are more readily understandable by the masses is a better way. So, end of comment.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. But
I agree with you, but I'm trying not to just because I know how far down the weeds stuff like this gets, these arguments. And I just, as a general rule, I think when a bunch of us technical people, and we get very passionate and we're very super concerned about the absolute precision of a term. But in the reality is, in the 4 billion people that need to read this, they're not going to understand. So we should bubble it up.
So don't worry, I have a follow-up question to you. So are you okay with subject attribute?
I abstain.
Dang it. So you adhere to your own principle. That is very honorable. Yeah.
Dave Kemp, NSA. I guess I'm coming to this late, but I agree. Certainly, we want to make it understandable and intuitive. I'm missing the controversy on why attribute is not intuitive. I mean, if you've got an email has a subject attribute, a sender attribute, a timestamp attribute. Each instance of an email message will have a particular value, but I'm not understanding what the problem with having a name and a value, why that's not intuitive. So
okay, then we just keep it at this. We agreed upon this. Again, this was just brought up, and I'm happy to close this issue. So, are we really asking this question? Okay. Brett, are you willing to help?
Brett Jordan, yes.
Thank you. Any other volunteers that I don't hand select? Frank, of course, if you want to have a cut at anything, please raise an issue. And if your contribution piling up, you're in. Okay. Thank you very much. Is it an issue blocker? Has anybody a problem working with GitHub and working with issues on GitHub or the project system?
At one point, sorry, this is Adam again. At one point in history, there were two camps, kind of in SACM. I'll call it two camps, I guess. One that was perfectly fine working in GitHub issues, and the other that really wanted everything to be on the list instead.
Okay.
So it's just reiterating, hey, we're actually kind of working on this in GitHub. Is that an issue or a blocker for anybody? Just to make sure that that's double checked, I guess. I don't know. Maybe it's a silly question, but
yeah.
From the chair, I thought we had kind of resolved that with, everything that happens in GitHub actually gets echoed to the list.
Yeah, automatically also.
Yes. Yeah.
How do you automate that?
It is automated.
It is automated.
Okay.
Adam
Oh,
did,
maybe that's fine. It isn't on this.
yeah, that's because Adam did GitHub now.
Yeah,
No, I was just introducing you, sorry.
Brett Jordan, yeah. So I don't have any issue with working with GitHub. And I think that's a great way to do because it provides some sanity to the madness that can exist through email discussion. My only thing is I'm somewhat OPD. And so as long as we do really good like labeling and structure and so people can find things and we can sort and order and organize and
you can add new labels and even add colors to them.
Yeah, I know you can, and if you see the
I'm doing
project,
that.
if you see the projects I work on outside of here, they tend to be very. But I try to make sure they're very intuitive, so somebody that's coming in for the very first time can go, "Oh, I understand what you're doing." Because if we, so anyways,
yeah, no, but the most
soapbox.
active draft that is making use of GitHub is the terminology, I think. We actually have a project there to resolve the issues. And we are using Martin Thompson's ID template GitHub library, which is awesome. Thanks. And so this is it, I think. Any questions left? Then I conclude my report about the terminology and make room for the next speaker. Thank you for your attention.
I need your magic. That's one of the M's.
you're too tall, Hank. Okay, Adam Mottfield, we're going to go over SACM architecture redux, whatever you want to call it. We did make one update after the last IETF to what we called an architecture document at the time. Can we go to the next? All right, cool. So from 00 to 01, these are basically the changes we made. Instead of saying that we have an architecture. We're trying to have that draft focus on the discovery of one, basically centered on hackathons that we've done in the past. We did add text about SACM roles. We added information about components, capabilities, interfaces, and workflows. More or less completed an appendix mapping to our use case document, RC 8248, and added an appendix of example components. This is a pretty short deck. I just have a bunch of questions. So how many people have read the 01? So a few people, okay. The questions that we have at this point, and maybe the last one is the most relevant from the group's perspective, but I'm interested in whether or not the taxonomy that we have in place in there is like about right. Is it on the right path? Are the workflows that we've identified, we haven't detailed the workflows yet, but we've labeled them, right? We're trying to start to define what those workflows would be. Are those about right? Are the mappings in Appendix A about right? And do you find the work useful? Because we're happy to continue it, but if it's not useful to anybody, then maybe we don't.
Hi, this is Henk from the floor. We are in dire need of an architecture because lint is aggregating in the terminology which should go there. Also regarding roles, I'm a little bit sad to see only very specific roles for components. The elegance of having the provider and consumer roles enabled a very flexible composition of SACM components. Now every component has to have a specific task to it, and there's no guidance how to create your own SACM components. So what I would like to see is to maybe revive that control plane concept of how you find a component, discover it, so this, and having the consumer and provider of information model applied both to the control plane functions and the data plane functions that are the machine that is the SACM automation composite. Because at some point, I don't think that we should force people to write a standard or an RC to add just another role.
Right.
And the earlier model, the first model, enabled basically universal composition by definition of functions and capabilities. And now this is all more glued together, which is more comprehensible to the early readers. So the learning curve is not as big. But on the other hand, you're really restricting yourself here, and maybe a little bit unnecessary, I think.
So to me, it's a little, the architecture draft this Redux draft, right, is very, at this point, XMPP grid centric, right? Because that's the work that we were working on.
Yeah, but that's okay. I'm fine with that.
Yes. One of the things that was mentioned in the MILE working group, that I mentioned in the MILE working group, was that section 10, there was the first bullet in that section says that providers and consumers need to come to some agreement semantically on what topics are available. And I think it follows from that, not only what topics are available, but how you interact with those topics, like what you expect to see from those topics, what operations you can perform over those things. And that stuff, I think that when we talk about capabilities, workflows, like tool capabilities, things like that, we would want to define here. And I think that's getting more to what you were just talking about in terms of roles. So yes, we would not want, I don't think we would want a new RFC just to define a new role. Instead, I would like a mechanism where somebody can define a new role, how to interface with that role. Where that goes, I'm not sure yet.
Yeah.
And table over at XMPP land, whatever that might be.
Okay. We had a preliminary draft that was basically digesting that.
We were asked to mark it.
And yeah, and now I wait for Nancy to come to the mic, which will take a while. So,
Well, so we had the general architecture draft, which I think was probably too abstract. So I'm just wondering if there is a way to merge the two. So as I'm looking at the roles and I'm looking at the figure, so forgive me, I only skimmed the 00. I haven't looked at the one. The way I interpret the draft, the current draft that is live, not the stale one, is basically an instantiation of the abstract, but perhaps not as complete. And again, I don't want to rehash all of the arguments that from the past, but it's the notion of you've got collectors and evaluators, and I forget the other, to me, roles, which I'm not seeing explicitly called out in this draft.
Right.
So I guess I would put more additions or bring not the whole parked draft, dead draft. Just to put the context of the whole intent, and then here's the exemplars, right?
So does that imply then, and this is all great feedback, like I love hearing this kind of stuff. This is good. And Bill, I hope you're taking good notes. So I'm happy to, I'm happy to update the draft, right? And see what we can do about, I don't know, merging is the right thing, whatever that is, right? But that seems to imply that the questions you're asking seem to imply that a draft like this is useful, that we should continue this work at some level and possibly start even elevating it a little. I don't know if that's the right term, but whatever.
Yeah, so at some point we had talked about how do you begin to do a posture assessment? How do we begin to do the posture collection? Right. Which is why we said, we need the requirements. Well, the requirements got us from the use cases anyway, to how do we begin to talk about the notion, and please, let's not rehash the terminology, okay? How we would have producers and consumers. I don't know what we ended up with. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, don't laugh. Yeah. But anyway, it gets to that level, which I think you have snippets of it, but, and again, I just did a flash read.
Yep.
It didn't give me a full picture of, I guess, both sides of
Sure.
the story.
Okay. Fair enough. All right.
And there's a good chance that I will find the time to maybe brunch and add some stuff as with the reconciliation stuff back in the terminology, and you can bash it a little bit.
Okay.
No. It was just. I think everybody got me.
I understand.
I didn't get it.
Hi, this is Stephen Banghart at the mic. I like it. It's readable. I feel like I could hand it to somebody who doesn't know all of this stuff and their head wouldn't explode, which is probably the point of having a document like this. So I like it. Obviously, it's a 0-1. There's stuff to add. There's stuff to do. I think this is valuable work. I think this is useful work. And I think we can actually get a lot of value out of this. It's written well.
Okay.
So Nancy, can I ask you a question? If we were to look at the current draft and the part draft, are you okay with moving something like this into a working group draft?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I should have stated, I do think we need something like this, because right now the current drafts that are moving forward, they talk about just software inventory, and it's like, okay, what do I do with this? SACM is about doing the posture evaluation, configuration, and okay, now what do I do with these drafts? So I do think we need something like this.
Yeah, I think we ended up in the, early on sort of going in circles on architecture, but now we've had some hackathon experience and some other things, and we've sort of settled on a way forward. So
Yep.
I'd kind of like to see it.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Move forward.
Yeah.
All right.
So
is-
happy to
is-
help you
Okay, cool. Yeah,
work on the
I'm
draft.
thinking the third bullet on this previous slide here is really what you're getting to. Like, what are the other capabilities? What are the other
Right.
workflows, the interfaces we need to worry about?
Right.
I just want to say, okay, we need to think about these things. Now let's start coming up with the taxonomy for these.
Right.
In a way that can be extended easily, so we don't need new RFCs to do all that, blah, 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 blah.
Exactly.
Yeah, cool.
I think we need to keep what Stephen said in mind, though. I think it really needs to be readable and accessible.
Oh, absolutely.
Agreed.
Yep.
The sausage making of creating your own components and the extensibility can be at the end of the document. I have no problem with that.
Okay, fair.
Okay. Just quickly, is there anybody in the room opposed to adopting this as a working group document? No. What we'll do is just have them pull pieces in. I don't want to try a merge. I want to try to identify pieces, and I think we take this as a baseline and then we add to it. Okay. We'll do a call for adoption on the list, but
Okay.
I think.
Cool. And that's it. Thank you.
All right. This is Charles.
Okay, Charles, I think you're up.
So, this is Charles. I'll be your Danny Haynes and Jessica Fitzgerald McKay for today. They're the ones who are actually moving this document forward, but unfortunately they couldn't be here. So I'm going to be presenting on this, which means I will be documenting any questions you have, but I will probably not be answering any of them. If you go on to the next slide, please. So just a quick update on the status of the endpoint compliance profile document. There was a fair amount of feedback received, both on and off the list. Danny and Jessica have made multiple updates to that, and the new version was published on the 2nd. It's got a lot of improvements, updating the scope as indicated. There's now a lot more information on netmod, rule, RESTconf, Yang data model going into the document. So those have been folded in. Took out a bunch of the stuff. This was originally a trusted computing group document. We took a lot of the material out, assumptions, requirements, and stuff like that are not typically part of IETF documents, but are part of the TCG documents. And then more focused on interaction capabilities of the NIA stack, focused a little more on data collection rather than the previous focus, which was more on evaluation. So we haven't removed that, but now have a lot more on the collection. So going on to the next slide. So final steps, or not final, but next steps. We've got additional feedback to integrate. There was a recent change, or the recent draft did not take out some of the text that refer to TCG documents. We're going to do that, get rid of the references to IFIMC, IFIMV, and continue to work on our netmod integration on this document. So that's basically the status. Progress is being made. Do you have anyone have any questions or comments that I can then take back to Danny and Jess when I see them next?
This is Stephen Banghart. I don't have a question or a comment. I wanted to give congratulations to Charles on getting the SWIM RFC published. That is a great document to get published out of this working group, and thanks everyone for their hard work on it. I know it was a lot of work to get through the RFC editor.
Thank you for everyone who gave such wonderful comments and feedback on that. So that was appreciated, all the help.
Okay, there's no comments or questions on this. I guess the one question I would take back to Jess and Danny is what's the rough timeline for their next update? And also, wow, I just lost my second question. It is such a Friday. Anyway, so the other question would be, do we have any people in here that are that will volunteer to review this document? Reviewers, please. Okay, Adam. Oh, Frank just got shocked.
Okay, Frank Xia, Huawei. Just a very quick question. About the new text about the net mode ECP part, do you mean that you will do some young model for the ECP profile? I haven't read the current document, so I don't know the goal of this part.
So it's not. My understanding is that we are not creating a new Yang model for ECP as much as we are. ECP is sort of a high-level description of how a lot of these components work together. So it's integrating how Yang could be part of the data collection process rather than defining a new model. Does that answer your question?
Okay. Sure. So I'm interested about this part. So that's why I think I can do some review.
Okay.
Yeah.
That would be great. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you, Charles.
Hello, this is Stephen Banghart up in the box. I am channeling Dave today. Or you can do it. Go ahead and just jump in if there's anything to do. Yeah, I have a small sheet of Dave thoughts, so I'll try and answer questions off of my sheet of Dave thoughts. If I cannot answer it, I will write it down and then turn them into Dave thoughts later. Okay, so this is an update on the concise software identifiers draft, the COSWID draft. Okay, so in July, the new version was posted. That is the -06 version. And a number of changes were made, namely improvements to the CDDL model to include, there's a screen down here, enums for the registered values, which I think is related to the extension points as well in the CDDL, and then some refactoring throughout, and improvements to the firmware extension, which I'm going to talk about a little bit next slide. Dave at least feels like the author. Dave feels at least like the draft is getting close to working group last call. Hank is looking at me. Maybe.
Hi, this is Hank from the mic. I'm author. Yeah, the draft is basically complete, lacking 3 issues.
I think I'm gonna. I'll go.
So
over those,
this is only legwork. There is no conceptual problem here. Someone just has to do it. But I did the firmware extension instead, so I hadn't had the time at this IETF meeting. We have a teeny tiny discussion about how to do a kind of any attribute with CDDL. This is not recommended, so we have a specific structure here. But we also are doing CDDL working group last call, and a specific control got in that might resolve this issue. So the added extension points might get a very elegant solution now. I have just to write the text. So I think in about 3 weeks from now, this document is complete.
Yeah, that lines up with my Dave thought here that he says he believes mid to late August, as long as the chairs are happy with the current draft for working group last call. So, okay. So these are the 3 issues that Hank had alluded to that need to get done still. If anyone was in suit, this came up at suit. The firmware extension has been pulled out, is going to be pulled out of the COSWID draft and then moved into its own separate document and then maybe / probably done in suit. I don't know what the status is on that, but I don't know if you want to talk on that firmware piece at all, Hank.
This is a report from the suit working group then. There is an original manifest that is just a COSI envelope. And it is basically very slim, tailored to the specific needs of firmware updates. Of course, it's a software update working group. But A lot of people are using workflows existing with SWIDs. Also, the description of firmware is done in suite, and we, as I understand it, the CPE concept in SCAP is going to be going away, and SWIDs will fill that vacuum. And if CPEs and the vulnerability assessment via them is now done with co-SWIDs and vulnerability assessment with them, we need firmware in co-SWIDs. It is a necessity. So this is what this manifest is about. This is an extension to a co-SWID that will be done in suite, because it is the exact same semantic content than a suite manifest. And at first, the authors of the data model were a little bit upset. But although I reiterated that I would do this a lot of times, I think, but offline discussions leveled the playing field. Everybody was okay with it again when I explained this is just the same thing, but for the people who use CP and vulnerability assessment, and we need that. And anyways, they wanted to move to maps. This was surprising to me, and we are using maps, so even better.
Okay, yeah, and Dave Hadoff, that's really good work. I'm glad that's getting done to do this manifest stuff and to kind of connect it over to suit. So thank you for doing that. Okay, I'm Dave again. Last two tasks to do are take care of the IANA registrations and then also clean up all the CDDL related documentation to include things like the example CDDL throughout the document. It needs to be kind of double checked and make sure that it aligns with the updated schema that was changed in the most recent version. So I think that pretty much covers all the to-dos, and Dave and Hank probably think that the working group last call should happen around the end of August.
So a chair question, how, and Hank, this probably frankly more directed at you, how stable is the CDDL spec at this point?
I have a Dave thought for that if Hank does not have a Hank thought.
Okay, give me a minute. Okay, so CDDL is very stable at this point of time. Alexei is encouraging to address only the issues we had discussed in the CBOR working group right now. And this sounds very promising. I think we will be finished in about 3 months latest. And maybe this even includes a working group last call earlier. So this is a pessimistic projection.
3 months for what?
Work group last call.
On this?
CDDL.
Oh, on CDDL, okay.
This was a CDDL question, right? Okay. But nevertheless, the NITs that are addressed at the moment have nothing to do with the language definitions we are using here. So this is safe. And I know this because I'm the author of CDDL.
Yeah, and Dave agrees with that as well. He thinks that both the CDDL and the spec is mostly stable, largely stable, and CDDL itself is stable enough to start working from. So,
yeah.
I think that's it. Questions?
Well, Jared, Oracle. I have a question regarding to what Hank just said. You said the CPE in ASCAP is going to be gone. I know it supported suite for a while. Do you know when it's going to go away?
So this is probably a NIST question. I'd be happy to talk with you offline. But organizationally, yeah, we're going to start phasing out CPEs and bringing in SWIDs over the next, I don't know, 3 to 5 years for a full phase out probably, but we'll talk offline.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Anything else?
I think I'm staying up here, right? Yeah. Okay, so this is Stephen Banghart at the mic as Stephen Banghart to talk about the Rolly software description. So a new update was posted. This is the -03 version of the document, and I apologize, it was a late posting on Monday, I think. So the document has been updated to be significantly more readable, to have some more clear and explicit requirements. that really kind of focus on making it as interoperable as possible. The previous version, while useful, didn't fully enforce a lot of the things that would make separate implementations really just automatically work together. So I've tightened up those requirements, made sure that completely separate implementations understand the same semantics from the same data formats and the same attributes and categories and all those things. At the moment, there's actually a requirement written using the media type of SWID. It does not have a media type. We are in contact with ISO about getting a media type registered for SWID. I don't think that we have to wait for that right now. As soon as ISO gets to the point where they're confident on what the media type is going to be, we can standardize around that, I think, fairly confidently. But so we'll keep an eye on that and make sure the group is aware of that media type status. If it falls through, of course, we can just standardize anyway on whatever we want. We just want it to be the official ISO media type because media types are good. So the authors of this document are happy with it. Maybe Ben is not happy with it.
Sorry, I'm just really confused because you're saying ISO and media type as opposed to IANA and media type.
So ISO is the standards body that's in charge of the SWID standard.
Okay.
And so they're, as the organization, we want them to do an organization-sponsored media type for their standard through IANA. So they are in contact with IANA to do the media type registration. I think there's just a good deal of bureaucracy that has unbelievably. So we'll see what happens there.
Frank Xiaohui, just a very simple question.
Of course.
The ROLI extension for SWID.
Yes.
What does this mean? Because as I understanding, ROLI is a transport protocol, subpub and how to get information, but SWID is some format or some attributes.
Yes.
So can you quickly clarify what is the extension?
Sure. So as you said, a given ROLI entry is just kind of a wrapper for a thing, right? It's just posted on the internet somewhere and it exists and it sits there. And then inside of that entry is a series of metadata. So for example, the content that I have is of this category and is of this size and it was updated at this time. And then there's just a link inside of that entry that points to the SWID tag.
So it's like the IOF or IODF or ROLI, and now you are SWID or ROLI. This is
yes. So you can still transport SWID over ROLI without this. This is an extension that enforces useful interoperability when two implementations want to talk SWID with each other.
Okay. Yeah, thank you.
Using ROLI, yes. So we're happy in the sense that we feel like we're done. However, we would really love more feedback. The author's request is to do a last call to generate feedback. That would be my request to the chairs. Thoughts on that?
I mean, I know you had some feedback on the previous version. Obviously, you just did an update. Has it?
Yeah.
How many people have? I'm not going to assume very many have read the current one. How many
Probably
have read the current or the previous? It's got to be more than just like Hank, Adam, and myself. I mean, so I'd like to take a look at the current draft and then kind of go from there, but the request seems reasonable.
Okay, great. Bonus rolling today only. The ROLI checklist draft received an update as well. This is the -01 update. There's a new author on the draft, which is me. I'm working with Adam and Bill on getting the draft completed as quickly as possible. The -1 update included mostly formatting and style changes throughout, so it matches the more recent look and feel of the other extensions. And then the document has been kind of frameworked out with a couple spots that are still to-dos, and the authors are going to work and fill this in as we go. And so we'll probably have a more substantive kind of content-driven update for this, either at the next IETF or at an interim if we do one of those. So and that is all I have. Any questions on any of that?
Any questions on the checklist?
It might be obvious to most, but not to everyone. What could you give us an example of a checklist? How would it be used? And I know, but I think it's important. But we've never talked about this, I think.
I think Adam would love to answer that question.
A CIS benchmark. Do you know what that is? Okay. It's a set of recommendations for how to configure a specific technology with security in mind. Yes, sir.
And that's like XCCDF and some related formats,
Sure,
right?
right.
There's a potential option there. Yeah.
Right.
Okay. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you. And
Hi, this is Yue from Huawei. Today I will present the update of our security baseline drafts. Yeah. Okay. Next page, please. Okay. Okay. First, I will give a brief recap of the objectives and the overall structure of our security baseline. Then I will show the updates of our data plan and the infrastructure layer drafts. Okay. The aim of our work is to define a minimum set of configuration and status parameters of the security related functions and services on a network device that can be collected by a second collector and can be further consumed by second evaluator to evaluate the device security postures. And in general, the security baseline can be divided into 3 layers: the application layer, network layer, and the infrastructure layer. And the network layer can be further divided into control plane, data plane, and the management plane. In this presentation, I will only focus the data plane and the infrastructure layer baseline. And my colleague Jessica will talk about the management plan later. Okay. This is changes we have made since last IETF meeting for the data plan drafts. Firstly, the configuration attributes for VSI broadcast traffic suppression function are added in the layer 2 protection. Then we changed all the names for the tree diagram and YAM modules, and then we added more derived types in the YAM modules, and our optimized YAM module have passed the YAM validate. Okay. This is an overview of the updates for the infrastructure layer draft. Firstly, we rewrote the introduction part to make the motivation and the structure of the draft more clear. And then we optimized the data model by delete the redundancy parts and give up to collect the confidential information. And in last, we also complete the YARN modules for integrity measurement and the groupings of cryptographic algorithms. And in the data model, sorry. Yeah, in the data model, in the integrity measurement part, we delete the key store information and the crypto engine container because these two parts has already been covered in two other separate modules. Okay. In the cryptographic algorithms, we using groupings instead of containers, so that other modules can reference the algorithms directly. And also we add a lot of add more algorithms into each of the groupings, such as we add the DSA and the EC DSA in the signature algorithm group. And we add DH and ECDH in the key exchange group. And we also add the CMAC in the message authentication code group. In the key management part, we just reference the predefined algorithm groupings rather than specify the algorithms configuration details again. Here are an example. In the key generation stage, we just use the key derivation function grouping instead of list all the attributes again. Okay. In the future, we will continue to optimize our data model, and we need to complete all the security baseline blocks for not only the data plan but also the infrastructure layer. Okay, and we are seeking more comments in the working group, and we hope anyone else, if there is, we want anyone else interested in our work can join us. Okay. That's all. Any questions?
Hi, Adam Montville, CIS. So the three drafts, right? There's three drafts in total that do the network stuff, right? When I look at those, I think immediately of the work that CIS does, not just for network devices, but for traditional computing devices, Windows boxes, things like that. The thing that's missing is the actual recommended value, right? So you guys have like this tree of configuration items, attributes, right, that we care about from a security perspective. Now in CIS, we tend to update those kind of frequently, or relatively frequently. So the question I have at this point is, with network devices, will this baseline change frequently? If it does change frequently, then is there a different way to go about doing this where we won't need to rev an RFC every time the baseline needs to change so that we can be more dynamic in the marketplace? For example, like with a Windows box, they release a new version like 1809, whatever that is, of Windows 10. They might have 5 or 6 new settings that we care about from a security perspective. I wouldn't want to do that twice a year or have to update an RFC. So, just curious, yeah.
I'm sorry. Yeah, you have raised a good point. I think comparing to the some PC or computers, our network devices, security-related configuration status are relatively stable. So yeah, we will not have. Currently, I can say that that most of the configuration parameters and the status specified in our document is very, very stable. It's exists a long year. It's just that there are no vendors to propose it as a right model to collect to validate the security status. So that's what we want to contribute to the industry. So they are very stable.
Ben Kaduk, so in light of Adam's comment, it was sort of interesting to see that both the finite field and elliptic curve DSA and ACTH were added, because I feel like the general direction that we in the IETF are going is that we recommend the elliptic curves, and we do not really recommend the finite field for new deployments and whatnot. So there could be a balance in there to strike as well. You might get some questions from IETF last call or IESG review if they stay in.
Adam Monfield again. So do you have a sense about how applicable these baselines are to other devices? So not just Huawei, but Juniper, Cisco devices, Barracuda, whatever. Like how applicable are these attributes to other device manufacturers?
I think we need to think about it to read the for example the configuration guide for other vendors products. Yeah, to see if we can. Yeah.
Cool. So we have CIS has, speaking on behalf of CIS at this point, we have a variety of different what we call benchmarks, the configuration profiles for a variety of different network devices. We could probably work together on that to see like how do they map to, does this map to all of those that we have, and that's.
Yes, that's also our wish, because I think actually for us these security postures are very stable in our company, and it's to be like some our internal security baseline for our company devices. And we also discussed with some other vendors like Juniper and Cisco, some other people, and they also express some certain interest. They say that this is a valuable direction. But yeah, so we welcome more contribution and can get a more comprehensive and more more quantity model for most of the vendors. Yeah. Thank you.
I guess I'm trying to understand, because you do have different drafts and they all speak to a security baseline. So there is the data plane, there's the management plane, there's the security posture of the specific device. And especially as you talk about network, there's many different capabilities. Within each capability, you have different security capabilities. So I guess I'm trying to understand the goals of that draft, what it means for it to be a baseline. And then my punchline is how that can become relevant to SACM, because right now, as I read through them, I don't think they're really part of SACM. I really do think they're part of I2NSF. So sorry, this is Nancy. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I can understand your concern. Yeah, but from my understanding, I think it's also shouldn't go to I2NSF. I2NSF is about the net security functions policy model, but this is about the security posture model. So that's why we propose this work initially here. But I understand your concern. It's if you remember, we have discussed the panic work. We want to extend our SACM work to cover the network devices. So, yeah.
We were very careful in SACM to say we're looking at the endpoint and just posture, right? I2NSF is about the network security functions, and we left it as security functions because we know that devices that are providing services within a network infrastructure are more complex, right?
Adam Monfield again. Yes, so I2NSF, network security functions, SACM, posture of endpoints, but we also included network devices as an endpoint. So the network device itself has a configuration that then results in I guess, the realization of a network security function. I don't know, but
Well,
so I see what you're saying, but at the same time, like we treat posture assessment of a network device the same way we would treat posture assessment of a data center endpoint.
I'm
So,
just rehashing history.
I understand. What else was it? I can't remember. Yeah, one other thing I was going to mention is about the work being in SACM or not. Okay, so yes, I see this being important when we get down into the weeds. Something that Bill and I were talking about yesterday was this more abstract collection description, like of what to collect. So how are we going to describe, how are we going to organize what to collect is a little different than specifically describing what we're going to collect, if that makes sense, right? So this is describing exactly what we want to collect. And if we can put this work into the more abstract collection structure, that could work. And I got your email earlier. We'll talk about it.
Yeah. So I was just trying to get clarity. So you're reading baseline as to what you collect. And that's what I'm just trying to get clarified, because I'm not getting that from reading the 3 drafts. Right? Because again, there's what you expect. So again, let me see if I can.
I was just, sorry. I was just doing a quick time check. We've got like 10 minutes left. So it sounds like that there is interest in this work. There's still some uncertainty about the scope of it and where it exactly belongs. And Ken, you all, I guess you all have been exchanging emails on this, so you can work it. I think from a chair's perspective, one of our concerns thus far is it seemed to have been, basically a one vendor thing. And so anything we can do to show that it's applicable across platforms or to show collaboration with other vendors, I think would really help with that perspective.
Yeah. You are right. That's why we already talk several vendors, and actually we some guys hadn't come here. Actually, we have. Okay, I understand your point. We will have more discussion and have more vendors join this work to make it more applicable across different platforms. Yeah.
Okay. It doesn't need to be, obviously they don't need to come here, but if you've posted a recent update, so send an email to the mailing list again saying that, you're soliciting reviews and any comments that you can get from some of those people and those other organizations, and that would be helpful as well.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, this is, sorry. So this is the final part of the security baseline work, meaning about the managed plane security. Oh, sorry. And I think we can skip the introduction part. And just to remind that we categorized the management plane security of the network devices into 4 submodules: the administrator management security and system management security, log security, and file security. And what's new in this new version, thanks for Hank's comments and suggestions, we have made some modifications in the introduction part and also the descriptive text in the submodules. And a few remaining issues will be addressed in the next version. So the main modifications in this version is about the administrator management security part. We refined the yarn tree and provided the corresponding data model. So for the administrator security policy part, we mainly included the security baselines about the account security policy and the password secure policy, such as whether to check the complexity of the password, and also the forbidding rules, whether it is set for the password configuration, and also it's a best practice that we usually block the account when the login is failed. And the second part is about the login security. So it contains different security controls on different login channels, such as Telnet and SSH. And third part is about the AAA security. It's mainly about which scheme is chosen and the corresponding servers. So the last part is the statistics about the online administrators and the IP block list. So next we will update the other three submodules in the draft and provide the corresponding YAML model to make it more readable. And we also will call for collaboration from other vendors. And the last is to better use these data models, we will consider how to adapt it to the YAML push mechanism. So that's all.
Any questions on this? Okay, I think we had some of the discussion on this already, so as part of the previous presentation. Thank you very much. No. Okay, good. So, yeah, we only have 4 minutes left. So we stuck the charter dates up here. We should probably take a look at these at some point and revisit them. They're not as bad as some working groups. But anyway, we should, we should take a look at it. The second thing is, so way forward, we kind of slacked off a bit this last time, but we would like to have some virtual interims going forward. We have targeted two potential timeframes for these, and I'm scrambling to find where I wrote them down. Okay, so we were looking at the week of August 20th or 27th for the first one. Any major concerns about that? We'll do this on the list as well, but okay. And then also the week of the 8th or 15th, October 8th or 15th. You don't have to give final answers now, but.
No, but week of October 15th wouldn't be great.
Okay.
For me anyway, and probably for Bill, but the configuration checklist, Rolly draft.
Yeah.
It's going to be hard to get to last call if it's not adopted first.
Oh, details. All right, so we'll do the housekeeping stuff after the fact. Oh, wait,
Hi, this is Henk from the mic regarding Yang push. There is some thread on the netconf list is Yang push now, also everybody's pushing for it, literally. Also, yeah, funny. And also there is a thing called a bundled notification message, which will be the cornerstone of the second way how to use Yang push. And I'm an author of that also, and it aligns a bit. But I think I will not make May 18.
Well, yeah, it's so as opposed to. Right. Go ahead, Stephen.
Just a quick comment on virtual interim. This is my personal opinion. I feel like it would be more productive to have a single virtual interim in September rather than two flanking it. I'm not sure we're going to have enough to talk about in 1 month.
Okay. Part of the reason why I was thinking of the other one was the No, the working group, like I can't remember the name of it right now. Wow. Yes. So let's do this. Everybody that thinks we need one virtual interim, the one thing is I do think we don't make any progress if we don't do something in between. So everybody hum for one virtual interim. Hum for 2 virtual interims. Wow, that was pretty darn effective. All right, so we'll figure out dates on one virtual interim in September sometime. And at that meeting, we will go through the milestones and see if we can update some of these dates. So folks, be thinking about those. Anything else? Okay, with 1 minute to spare, we're done.
Oh, no, it just flipped. It's exactly on time. It just flipped exactly on time.
Well done.
In September.
Oh,